Information Systems. It is now 2 o'clock or 1400 hours by my clock, and we'll allow for about another 3 or 4 minutes for others to join, and then we'll go ahead and get kicked off. So thank you for everyone who have attended so far or connected so far, and we will get started shortly. All right. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining part 3 of NetX Information Systems Top 5 Tips and Tricks for getting the most out of your Altiris / SMP or Semantic Management Platform implementation. Again, my name is Antoine Gray. I'm Vice President of Technical Operations. This session is sponsored by our friends over at Altrinsic Solutions, who are doing some wonderful things with software to make life a lot easier for our IT administrators, etc. In this presentation, we'll go through and talk a little bit about us. Who is NetX? Then we'll get into I'll explain the top 5 tips and tricks that we'll go through. We'll have our technical presentation. Well, I'll actually jump into the bits and bytes, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over to Altrinsic Solution, who will then go through a presentation on their products, Deploy Expert. So who are we? NetX Information Systems is an Altiris partner, or we've been an Altiris partner since 2003. We have since expanded into other areas within the Symantec portfolio, such as backup and recovery, e-archiving, etc. But we're an engineering company first. We have a staff of senior level engineers. We don't have any juniors on our team, and we ensure that we all maintain the appropriate level of accreditation so that we can bring the best possible services to you, our customers. NetX Information Systems, basically, as I stated, we do provide services around the Altiris Symantec solutions. We also provide training. Our training is basically allows us to deliver real-world content to our customers while actually not having to travel away from your home or office. You connect it to a live lab, and you're deploying images, deploying software, etc. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the closing portion of the presentation. We also are product developers. We have developed a NetX appliance, and this NetX appliance basically allows us to drop the semantic management platform into your environment and be up and running within the first hour of getting the box connected. That also means rolling out agents, collecting inventory information, etc. And some of the tips and tricks that we have been able to build into our appliance to allow this piece of equipment to run much faster, we will actually go through today, as well as we've gone through some of those configurations within the last two presentations. So we're basically sharing our secret sauce, so to speak. Altrinsic Solutions, our partners, basically offers full automated hardware independent image deployment and migration. They allow us to take that Windows XP image, that Windows 7 image, those Windows 2008 images, etc., and to be able to deploy those images out into our environment using a zero-touch type of approach, allowing for the installation of driver-based software such as a fingerprint reader, as well as the actual components to load that particular peripheral, so the actual drivers themselves. That says part 2, ignore that. This is actually tips and tricks part 3. As a part of our presentation today, we'll go through a couple of console tweaks. This will also include IIS and ASP.NET. We'll talk about some SQL optimizations, as you can see on the screen here, and also ignore the using troubleshooting tools for SSEs. This is actually a part of the part 2, which was a recorded session. This session is also being recorded, and links to the recording will be made available to you as soon as the recording is posted. So as with the previous presentation, we also had a drawing for a winner of the iPad Mini, and this week's winner is Lee Henry of U.S. News and World Reports out of Washington, D.C. So Mr. Henry, if you are on the call, congratulations, and you should be receiving your iPad Mini shortly. So now we'll go ahead and get into the technical presentation. Give me just a moment to change up my slides. Okay. So first I want to thank the audience for all the questions and feedback from the previous 2 webinars. We've taken that information and put that into this last webinar, part 3 of the 3-part series. I also want to provide or give thanks to Carson Geese of Symantec, who made available some of the information um, to put into this particular presentation. So again, thank you for the questions and feedback, as well as thank you to Symantec for your assistance. I want to go ahead and put forth a disclaimer. Any of the configuration changes or topics that we're discussing here, by all means, I want you to test them out, see what works for you, but please make sure that you test your configuration changes in a lab environment first. And prior to moving to production, you want to make sure that you have a recent and functioning backup of your system. This includes not only the database, but any configuration files that may be changed. So one of the questions that was actually posed in the feedback was, hey, this is a trick question. How can I speed up my console? When I go to look at my computers, it takes a long time for the computer pane to load. Well, there's a very simple configuration option within the console that will allow us to do that. This enhanced view configuration, which we can actually access simply by from within the console, going to settings, console, and enhanced view, will present this UI here. It takes a short moment for that UI to load, and then once that comes up, we can go ahead and make our configuration changes. So by default, in this particular dialog box here, we're going to have the first radio button selected, and this may be up to 10,000 or so in this particular box. So if you're managing a very large environment, maybe your S&P is underpowered, maybe SQL is underpowered. We're working on those pieces, but there's some things that we could do in order to get performance back into the console pretty quickly, so I'm not having to wait 2 or 3 minutes for my console to load. Just simply go in here, go ahead and make the change to, as far as the search, you want to go ahead and select the radio button to only bring back the search results after I've pressed enter. This also speeds up the console because it's not searching as you're typing, as well as you can go ahead into this last box here and make the configuration change. Now, in our test environment that I'm going to display here, we only have a small number of machines. So I'm going to go ahead and crank this back to about 10. And the reason for that is because what we'll see is as we, if there are more machines available that need to be shown, we're going to basically get this little indication here. We can go ahead and click on that indication, that particular item, and it'll go ahead and bring up the rest of the machines that are waiting for us to load. This particular setting not only applies to your computers, but it also applies to your software. So if you're managing a very large environment, you'll notice that you have maybe panes and panes of software within your software catalog. And in some instances, it can take quite a bit of time for that pane to load. This setting also affects that. For more information, just as in all of our other webinars, you can go to the URL below. That will give you more information on how you can configure this particular option, as well as some of the benefits and things of that nature. Now, again, this presentation is going to be recorded, and an email link will be sent out to you as soon as it's posted. It's generally within 24 to 48 hours. So all of this information will be available to you at that point. So what I'll do is, this is a really simple configuration. I'll go ahead and bring up my console. Okay, and within my console, you'll notice that this is my default view. I have all of my computers listed here. I'm going to simply go into my settings. I'm going to go to console and enhance view. And this, again, a very, very simple, very quick tweak that will allow us to bring back a little bit more performance to our environment. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to just change this to 10. And I'll click OK. Now, once this reloads here, it takes a moment to reload, but I'm not bringing back tons and tons of computers. I'm bringing back only 10 machines. So you may notice over time, as you're rolling out agents, your console starts to slow down. Again, if we go ahead and make that really simple and quick change, then it'll speed up the loading of your computers. You can still search for other computers that are listed within the console, or if you just want to look at your list, you just simply click more, and the rest of them load pretty quickly. So no lag time there. Okay. Go ahead and switch back over to my slide deck. Okay. So another performance tweak is tweaks within IIS. Now, I won't actually go into IIS and make these configuration changes because I will just simply run the script that you see on the screen here. But a couple of things that we can do, again, very, very simple, without going deep into the weeds, is to simply go ahead and disable IIS logging. Now, there is at least one article out on Connect where the gentleman actually disputes whether turning off IIS logging is beneficial. But here's my point. If I am not having to write these log files, am I not giving performance back to the operating system in general? Okay. So disabling IIS logs, unless you are going through some type of troubleshooting process, if we are able to take at least one layer of skin off the onion, why not do that? We can also go ahead and enable HTTP compression. And within this particular batch file screenshot here, you can see that we're going to actually go ahead and turn on our IIS compression, or HTTP compression, excuse me. We're also going to perform some ASP tuning, which is down below. And if you are wanting to perform some additional actions within IIS via the command line, here is a great reference for using the app command within batch files, command lines, etc. Okay. Another tweak that's a part of IIS is ASP.NET performance tweak. So in my previous presentation, we talked about application pools. We talked about also going in and turning off evidence checking within ASP.NET. Well, here's yet another configuration change that we can make, and here's the article down below. So if you want to read more about it to see if this is something we want to do, then by all means do so. But basically, with this particular configuration tweak, we're going to turn off debug mode. As you notice here, which I highlighted from the article, debug mode compiling can cause performance problems for any ASP.NET application, and that is basically our console. Most of it runs on ASP.NET, except for the Silverlight pieces, etc. So I won't go through all of the different complications or performance impacts that you may experience from the notification server with debug mode turned on. And this actually has been around for quite a while. You'll notice if you go and take a look at that article, there are two attachments. There's the first Disable Web Debug version 1.zip, which is for the 6.0 version of the notification server. This is what I used when I was out in the field as a field engineer. For those of us who are now on either the 7.0 or the 7.1 platform, you're going to go ahead and download the second zip file. And basically all this is going to do is it's going to flip this true to false within the web.config. And by running this command, it eliminates any possible syntax errors by adding additional spaces or a period or whatever the case may be as we're going in and attempting to edit this file directly. So I'll pop into the console here. Okay, and I'll go ahead and minimize this. So when I download this debug zip, I extracted, it's basically going to have these two files inside. Now what I've done is from the article, I thought I did it from the article, inside of there it is, I have the different command line switches that you would be able to take advantage of. So the first one is just to run the debug with the /check, and this will let us know whether we even need to turn off debugging. And then if we've run testing in the labs and things of that nature, just basically referencing back to the disclaimer, and we've encountered no issues, no adverse effects, then we can go ahead and run the fix. The last command line here is configured so that if you can configure this so that if you have installed Altiris into a separate directory other than the default, which would be C or D or whatever the drive letter is, program files Altiris, then you can go ahead and put in the appropriate path so that it can run correctly. So what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and open the command line, and I'll just drag that executable in there, and I'll run a check just to see how quickly this goes here. So it double checks to see if that web config file does actually have debug enable, and if I want to go ahead and fix that, then I would just simply run fix. And not much has changed from the previous version, from the 6.0 version. It ran exactly as we see here. So great little utility. Thank you to the folks in the support organization for putting that together for us. Okay. Flip back over here. All right. There were an overwhelming number of questions around SQL configurations, SQL optimizations, etc. So I wanted to add as many SQL configuration options in as possible. The first one is around with the board, and basically what this does for us by simply going in and turning this off is if we're encountering an error or a stack overflow or divide by zero within a query or statement or whatever the case is, it'll just simply go ahead and escape. It will not hang on that particular statement. It'll just go ahead and allow us to move on to basically the next step in that query or whatever the case is. So one of the things that I pulled out of the article that you see listed below here is you should always set arithmeboard to on in your login session. So when we are if we're writing programs and things of that nature, we're going to want to go ahead and turn that on and pass that through to SQL in our .NET applications or whatever we're writing. To ensure that we don't have any issues from within the semantic management platform, which there's no evidence that that this is not being turned off on every login session, we're going to go ahead and configure this appropriately. So notice again, setting arithmeboard to off can negatively impact query optimizations leading to performance issues. The default configuration for arithmeboard is off. So we're going to basically go ahead and turn this configuration on. How do we do that? Well, this simple query here, or a simple statement, will allow us to go ahead and turn that on. We simply go into our SQL Management Studio, set arithmeboard on, and then the second line here is basically optional, as you can see within this text box here. It just basically will let us know the state. So I can run that all on its own if I wanted to, just to see how that is set in my environment already. Now, you can run this on an existing implementation, or you can run this prior to install. I've done it both ways. No negative impact in either method that I've used. Okay. So the next option here we'll talk about would be basically the default behavior of SQL is to, on every transact SQL, every store procedure, etc. that runs, creates an execution plan which is stored in the system for reuse. And I'll just read directly from the slide here. This results in a large number of query plans stored in the system. So what I have the ability to do, if I don't want to waste that memory resources, I can go ahead and configure my SQL implementation to optimize for ad hoc workloads. We basically are going to go ahead and turn this on or set it to equal true, and this is in SQL 2008 and above. As you can see here, the statement that I have highlighted, again, directly from Microsoft, is that this helps to relieve memory pressure, right? So it basically, by freeing up this space within memory, we're going to go ahead and optimize our SQL. So I'm going to go through and actually run a test against my SQL database to show the fact that if I, what the output looks like if I have this turned on versus what the output might reveal if I have this configuration set to true. Okay, again, the default configuration is off or false. Okay, so how am I going to implement this? There we go. All right, so I'm going to either run a statement that basically first turns on advanced options, and then we'll go ahead and set the optimize for ad hoc workloads to true or on. I can also, if I don't want to go through the hassle of checking my syntax, etc., I can go ahead and right-click on my my instance. In this particular case, we only have one instance. I can go ahead and right-click on that, select my properties, and then under Advanced, I go ahead and set Optimize for ad hoc workloads to true. Again, this can be performed in an existing implementation or prior to your Altiris install. Again, I've seen no adverse effects by turning this on a system that I was, had not had much experience or insight into. So we'll go ahead now and switch over to our console. I want my SQL server. Here we are. All right. So let me go ahead and right-click on my instance and go to Properties, Advanced. Okay. And we'll notice here that I have Optimized for ad hoc turned off. I'll go ahead and turn that on by running this statement. And I realize this may be elementary for some, but for some of you more advanced folks, just please bear with me for just a moment. So I've turned this on to true. I've set this to true now. So what I'm going to do here is, with this set to true, I'm basically going to run this query. I'm just going to select asterisk from vComputer, and I'm going to have this run in a batch. So I'm going to run this 5 times. So I click execute. Ad hoc is set for true. Takes a moment to run for its first time. Again, it's going to run this query 5 times. I should click OK there. Okay, so as I scroll down here, you'll notice that for my count, so basically what I'm doing is I'm running this, and I'm going to take a look at the execution table for execution cache plans, and I'm going to count the number of times this is in here. So I've run this 5 times, it only shows up 4. That's because I've actually, the first time this ran, I tossed it away, because I wasn't going to use it again. But since the system saw that I'm going to run this again and again, I now have a total of 4. If I go back and I turn this off, then execute that, and I run the same test again, So now it's in there 5 times. So this is only one query, one test. I'm running just 5 times. So what? I dropped out one execution plan. No big deal, right? But what happens if I'm running hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of queries? I'm running all these different routines, etc. That can start to really pile up, because I'm sure you've heard that SQL is a resource hog. It'll use everything you give it. Well, that is true. But how can we combat that? Well, one way is to just optimize for ad hoc queries or ad hoc workloads. And again, you can either run the statement that I have here, or you can right-click. If you're not a coder or anything of that nature, you're not a SQL person, that's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and make the change right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to on and execute that. And now, in my demo environment, is not going to make much of a difference because we're not doing a tremendous amount. But again, in your production environment, this could be this could be a saver for a resource, a saver for you. So we'll go ahead now and switch back to my slides. Okay. And we'll talk about the next concept. Now, this particular concept here, I'll admit I have not implemented into the NetX appliance. But I did, once I took a look at the information that Symantec provided, I noticed that this particular configuration is very helpful, and there's some parameters behind it that we need to understand prior to actually setting max degree of parallelism. So first off, what is it? It basically determines the number of processes which can participate in the query execution. The default is 0, which will basically allow the use of every processor in that system to be involved in running a query. This might sound like a great idea. From the research that I've seen, as well as from from the information from Symantec, this may not necessarily be the greatest utilization of the processors within your system. So, as you can see with the second paragraph here, by dividing operations such as range scans into smaller chunks and combining results, we can actually glean a performance benefit. This is especially beneficial for reporting and data warehousing systems, etc. There's this huge link down below for where you can get more information in reference to this particular configuration. It is a little dated. It's 2008, but we're still running on SQL 2008, so it's relevant. And again, this is being recorded, and these slides will be available in the recording, so you'll be able to see the different URLs and take advantage of them. So Symantec article link down below. If you want to get a jump start on understanding max degree of parallelism as it relates to Altiris, go ahead and go to this particular article. There's also other information in this article related to SQL as well that I'm not actually covering in this particular webinar. But again, it's great information there. I would advise you to go through, take a look, read through it, etc. So this is going to apply to SQL servers that have more than 4 cores. Again, straight from the article, lowering the max degree of parallelism rather than leaving it at default 0 can improve performance, but there are some recommended settings. And again, this is straight from the article. Client-facing, not much reporting. So if I'm basically capturing inventory, maybe my system is used for software delivery and things of that nature, and I'm only using transaction or operational types of reports to kind of understand what's going on in my environment, then I'm going to go ahead and use the first configuration. I'm going to set it to 2. But if I am either participating, or my server is participating in the hierarchy, and the server that I'm configuring is a parent of the hierarchy, or it's my reporting server where I'm going to be running heavy IT analytics, or I'm going to be doing some heavy off-hour reporting and things of that nature, then I will go ahead and set that to 4. and that's for the next two categories as well. So reporting as well as servers queried by IT analytics. So if I have downstream servers and I'm connecting directly into those servers via IT analytics to pull information, because with ITA you have the ability to configure for other Altiris servers. You don't have to just simply run ITA against the server in which it's actually living. And then there's a second setting within that advanced properties tab that you had a preview of earlier. It's the cost threshold for parallelism, and that is to set to 10. Again, directly from the article below. I found this one to be very, very interesting because this is one that I was not aware of. So I did tons of research on Microsoft sites and etc., as well as some blogs out there to fully understand the impact of this particular configuration. So how do we implement a max degree of parallelism? Again, we can, because of SQL, we can go ahead and run a statement by turning on the show advanced options. We go ahead and set the degree of max parallelism, and then we go ahead and set the cost threshold. If we, again, are not folks who are very comfortable with scripting, then I can just simply go into my advanced, again, right-clicking on that instance. In our case, it's the default instance. Go down to properties, select advanced, and then I have the ability to go ahead and set my max degree here and my cost threshold here. So this is the configuration that we have in our particular lab environment. Okay. Now, a lot of the feedback and or questions that we received from the previous two webinars were basically around how to. How do I virtualize on the fly, or how do I create a hardware independent image? How do I use file preservation component of the Ghost engine, which is a part of our deployment solution within DS7.1. How do I take advantage of these components? So I put this particular slide up here because those how-tos are really not tips and tricks. What my goal in presenting these three webinars, or this three webinar series, is to kind of present some of the more hidden features, some of the things that engineers are aware of, but the customer may not be, and it's not very easy to find information on. For the how-tos, how do I deploy my agents? How do I deploy my software? What's the best way to manage my software catalog? What should I do when planning a operating system migration, whether it's XP to 7 or 7 to 8? We cover that information in our training. If you go to netxinc.com/training, we have our client management suite course as well as our deployment suite course. And as a part of our deployment suite course, we also cover the Altrinsic solution for managing your drivers. So that's a 2-for-1 in that particular course. Great course. We also cover methodology for going through a operating system migration, etc. Again, this is a class that is taught virtually, but with a live instructor. So you will log into your classroom session each morning. It's interactive, so the lines of communication are open. You have your own lab environment with domain controller, SMP, clients to deploy to, etc., building images, deploying software. So if you have not already, by all means, just go out and take a look to see what we offer. If it suits you, great. Go ahead and sign up. I guarantee that you'll enjoy the class. We also have, as a part of this class, you notice this little blue box up above. You'll receive for free 3 months of Altiris training videos. So if you forgot how to configure security, or you want to look at creating applicability or detection rules within software management, you have a source to go out and get those specific training points around those disciplines. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn the presentation and the mic over to our friend Mark England over at Altrinsic Solutions to show you about, talk to you about some of the great things they have going on over at Altrinsic. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Antoine. Hey everyone, I am Mark England with Altrinsic Solutions, and we are the makers of the DX product. Today I'm going to go over a little bit about sysprep, mainly Windows 7 sysprep. The first session we did for part 1 was kind of an overview of DX, and the second part was about managing and troubleshooting difficult drivers during deployments. And so today we're going to get into sysprep because that's a common problem point, and so there are some tips that I can give to get past some of those hurdles. So the first thing we're just going to start with is when you're creating the image in here, it doesn't ask for an answer file. And so people are usually more familiar with Windows XP sysprep, where you needed an answer file when you were going to seal that image. And so XP, was always a little bit difficult to get a proper image created, and then it was a little bit easier to deploy. And when I went to Windows 7, Microsoft kind of moved some of that difficulty to the other end. And so in Windows 7, it's easy to get that image because it's built, the sysprep's built in. You don't need an answer file necessarily. And so it's easy to pull that image, but it adds a lot of difficulty to the unsealing part, the deployment part. And so you'll see when you do an image creation, either through here, or you can do it directly from the semantic console just by creating a prepare image for capture task. It's not asking you for an answer file. So the first thing I wanted to point out that there actually is an answer file that gets deployed when you do an image creation by Altiris, and just for those curious, it's by default here. It's in your Altiris directory, Altiris notification server, nscat bin, win32x86 deployment. So that's a bit of a path, but this is where it is by default. It's a very simple file, and honestly, like I said, you don't even have to have a file when you seal sysprep, but there is one provided by the default Altiris task, and usually the only passes that are actually being parsed by sysprep when you seal are the generalized and the specialized passes. So that's that. So if you need to make changes like to the generalized pass, then you need to edit the file here in this path, because this is the one that Altiris uses by default. There's no easy way to change which path it's using, so you would have to change this file. So I wanted to touch on that, but like I said, a lot of the difficulty comes from the other end, so we're going to focus on that sort of Windows 7 stuff. Now the next thing, when you create a DX deployment job, it does ask for a sysprep file. Now, if you say generate using inventory data, this works great for XP and those early OSs. For Windows 7, it uses that file that I just showed you. It's simple, it's not great, it's not really going to get you that unattended installation you want to use, that you're going for. It's missing a few key features, and it does have some nice tokens, so it's worth consulting, but in the end it's not complete, I guess is what I'm getting at. So DX does supply one. We create one during the installation of DX, but it's not necessarily intuitive where it is. Now, so it's in that same path that I just showed you, all the way down to deployment, but then it's even further. It's in DX sysprep. And so this is actually going to, let me open this up. So this is the default file. Now the default file is a very good starting point, but it's not perfect because of a few things I'm about to tell you. The first thing is that, DX is trying to do a lot in this file to make it good for everyone, and a lot of these passes you may not need even. And probably don't, in fact. The first one being it has a big pass for WinPE. Now most people here are going to be using Automation Partition or Pixie, and so they're not even going to have sysprep running a WinPE pass. So this is basically, for most people in the Altiris environment, they don't need a WinPE pass. So you can pull this out completely. The other thing you can do to simplify your file right off the bat is down at the very bottom there are audit passes, and these are backwards compatibility with earlier versions of DX. But these audit user pass and this audit system pass aren't needed for anyone using any reasonably recent version of the SMPs. Basically 7.1, SP2. We basically left this in there because there are some old images that are sealed in audit mode that we wanted to be compatible with. But anyone that's creating a new image with 7.1 SP2 or later can just take these out. You just select them and they're gone. And that just freed up a lot of space and made it a lot simpler for us. So the only real passes that DX is relying on are the UV system pass up here, which is the first one, which is, of course, the out-of-box experience, and down below the specialized pass. So a couple things I wanted to mention here. In this file is, like I said, it's trying to be a lot of things to everyone. And so it actually has duplicate component passes for both x86 and AMD64. Some people like to have it that way. You know, so they just have one file for both of the things if they're going to be identical. Usually, if they're not going to be identical, like you have to make some sysprep changes for 64-bit versus your 32-bit, you probably want to manage separate files for those. You know, just have one called unattend 32 and one called unattend 64, and that'll save you a bit of time. Well, I just find it a little bit simpler, I guess. And so here's an example of a unattend 32-bit. So I've taken out the 64-bit passes. I've put in some fake passwords here. The other thing to mention, so I wanted to touch first here on tokens. So you see down in the specialized pass, this is where the computer gets named and registered, the product key gets added, and the time zone are set. And there's actually a lot of other properties here. These are kind of the basics. So these are a little bit different tokens than they used to be in 6.9, but you can still use a handful of them. At comp name, at username are default tokens used by the DX file, so you'll see them in there if you open it. This is one that I pulled from the default Altiris file, at license. So that requires that you know, the image be tied to an OS in the semantic console and have a product key associated with it, and you can use this token. You know, if you're using just a Mac, you could just put it in here statically. If you're using an activation server and you're going to run the activation script afterwards, you want to take out this whole line. If you leave this blank, if you leave this property blank, you're going to get a parsing error because that's an invalid key according to Windows 7, and it's not very forgiving when it comes to product keys. Like XP was, XP would say, oh, that's wrong, please try again. Windows 7 just dies, and you're just stuck. So you really want to be careful and get that product key right the very first time. And so, you know, and the only real difference between these basic passes between 32-bit and 64-bit is this architecture. So you could actually, you know, if you had a 32-bit and you wanted to make a 64-bit, you can do a find replace on, you know, quote x86 and replace it with quote AMD 64 end quote, and then you could, you know, have two different versions of each one. So the last thing I want to touch on that some people sometimes have some questions about is the user account section. Now, the out-of-box experience requires just, it's from Microsoft, that a local account be created when the out-of-box experience is running. And so you can do that two ways. In the default file, you'll see that it's setting a password. This is the default. If you look at it, it's called change this password. This obviously isn't a very good password, but you can change this to whatever you'd like just by typing it in here. And it creates an account called default user. Now, this is a local user account that's just a user. So some people will leave this on there so they have a login. Some people remove this account after sysprep, and some people use this opportunity to create a local administrator account, which is I've shown that here. Basically, you can give it a custom name, and then you can put it in group administrators. And that's very handy because you know, if you've dealt with Windows 7, you know that the administrator account is disabled by default during sysprep, so you can't just log in as the administrator account afterwards. So it's sometimes handy to have to be able to create that local administrator account during your deployments, and then you don't have to worry about managing it in the image itself. You can do it from the answer file. So, you know, really creating this file is something you really want to be careful with the first time around. The other thing you can use is, if you're familiar with in the Wake tools, there's something called the Windows System Image Manager. And you can open an XML file there with a Windows 7 catalog file, and you can use that to encrypt these and add a lot of different components. They're all going to be listed there. That can be helpful. Some people are worried that these are in plain text. They don't have to be, but if you want them encrypted, you need to use, it's an option called Hide Sensitive Data in the System Image Manager. And so if you open one of these files up in that, you can encrypt them, and they won't be seen unless someone else opens it with the System Image Manager tools. So, okay, so going to move on to the actual DX deployment job. So once you have your sysprep file set up, when you're creating your job, you want to have a custom sysprep file, and you'll browse to it and use a real key. I have a fake one here, but if you have a real key, you should use a real key here. Browse to your custom sysprep file. And like I said, the default is in this path, but it can be anywhere. You can just browse to it. Choose your other options here for your DX, and when you create the job, it will create it in system jobs and tasks, deployment and migration, deploy expert, DX deploy jobs, and then here they are. So this does create like a temporary, so even if you browse to your custom, it creates a copy of it, like you see here. It'll say Windows Vista and then a GUID. And basically, so that's making a copy of it. So sometimes people will, afterwards, they'll make a change to this and not realize that the job is actually using a copy of the file they specified. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing, so basically, just so we're all on the same page here, when we deploy, basically the deploy image part of the DX job is just a ghost image deploy, and then part of that, just part of the actual default semantic one, is that it's copying down the answer file as well. So it's actually copying the specified answer file to the system to see Windows Panther. And then there's a task in the DX job that is running an executable in automation called injection.exe, and that's adding our install driver script to sysprep, and it's basically adding as a C script to run the VB script during the specialized pass. And then the drivers, when it comes back up, they're actually installed during that pass. In the last few minutes here, I kind of want to talk about issues that people see when they some of the issues they run into during a deployment. One that everyone's probably common with, you've probably seen an error like this if you've done many Windows 7. People run into this error a lot. Could not parse or process the unattended file for pass specialize in component Microsoft Windows shell setup. And basically that's telling you that there's something wrong in the answer file. And if you wonder if there's a way past this, not really. You have to redeploy at this point. So this is something you really want to avoid. Now, if you're in the Microsoft Windows shell setup pass, it's usually one of two problems. Either you have an improper token, a token that's wrong, or you have a problem with your licensing key. It's either an invalid key, or you left it blank, or you missed something. So you should go back and check those things, and also make sure there's no invalid characters. Like if you specified an organization name, make sure you don't have any special characters in there, because that can cause this error as well. If you have this same error, but the component is Microsoft Windows deployment, that's the component that DX is adding the driver install to, and any app installs that you've added in DX. So if you're seeing that, usually what's happened is that your app command is wrong, or that it wasn't able to access the tools folder and it didn't copy to the client. So you should check the DX repository folder on your task server and package servers and make sure the the DX service account has access to those. Because if it can't copy down, you might have gotten to this step, but if it's trying to call a setup.exe that doesn't exist, you'll get an error in the Microsoft Windows deployment pass. The other things I can tell you about this is when you're here, you can hit Shift F10 to get a command prompt, and you can get to this sysprep error log, which is in C Windows Panther setup err.log. And so if you can find that, it will tell you a lot more information about what has actually happened. So if you have like an improper character, you might see something like this. Provided unattended file is not valid. You'll see things like that. If it's like a token replacement thing, sometimes you'll see something really basic like this, which just says execution failed. but your setup ACT will have a full log of everything that's happened, and it will say Windows could not parse and process the unattended file, the pass, and a little bit more information up through here. So check both these log files. They're both in C Windows Panther, and you can hit Shift F10 to get to the command prompt in those cases. So those are the two big things. The last thing I wanted to mention in sysprep is that sometimes people run into the rearm limit when they're sealing. So when you make an image, it's running ubi/generalize. And if you generalize the
Okay, I think we may have lost Mark. Our apologies there. But a lot of great information nonetheless. I'll go ahead and change presenter. Okay. Should you have any questions around license sales, whether it's Altrinsic, Altiris, or any of the other components that we've discussed, um, please don't hesitate to give us a call at the number you see on the screen, or fire off an email at sales@netxinc.com. We will be more than happy to speak with you about training, implementation services, software license sales, etc. Again, I want to thank you for your attendance today, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.